Hello and welcome to the 26th edition of Half Hour, a podcast starring me, John Paulo Giudice. In today's episode, I will discuss ballet boarding school with Jean Kallenburg. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure.
I'd like to just both say that we're both presidents at our respective colleges, UNIP and AAU, so that's pretty cool. It's very nice to have you on the show, and I guess I'll just start off with tell us a little about yourself, like your background, like where you're from, and like what you're doing here in Prague, and just things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds good. So as JP mentioned, I am the president of Student Council at Anglo-American University, which is how we met. We're hoping to do maybe some more collaborations between UNIP and between AAU. I think it's great to have an opportunity for all of our students to kind of interact and stuff. But about me, I'm from Washington, D.C., but I've lived kind of all over the United States. And as I mentioned, this podcast is going to be kind of focused on my ballet boarding school experience, which I talk a lot about on TikTok, get a lot of questions about. And it was definitely kind of an interesting life transition coming from that point, going to Prague, and then now moving on to like sort of business and investment sort of stuff. So I definitely have some interesting life stories that I can kind of explore a little bit here on this podcast today.
Yeah, very cool. Why did you come to Prague? Like, what was like the driver?
It was definitely a crazy time. 2020 was like nuts for everyone, but especially for me because that was the year I was supposed to graduate from Kirov, which is the boarding school that I went to. And I remember everyone was moving to online classes, and being in a ballet school, they were like, you can't really do ballet online, right? And so we were trying to stay at school as long as possible, and then just kind of came to a point that the cases in DC spiked. We had to go home. We did start doing ballet school online, and I was like, you know what? I'm really not enjoying this. The future of ballet is not looking good right now. We don't know how long COVID is going to last. Like, all of these performing arts places were suffering because no one could go see like arts in person. You couldn't go to the theater. And ballet companies were firing and not hiring dancers. So my parents and me, we were both like, oh my gosh, like I gotta have a backup plan here. And the only thing I could think of at the time was, what else do I like? I was like, I like different cultures, learning languages. I know quite a bit of Russian from ballet school, so let's go to university and let's do it in Europe so I can travel. That was kind of my logic during that period of crisis.
Yeah, no, and it's really unique to be able to come out here and study here. Like, I feel the same way. I remember I exchanged here 2.5 years ago, and then I went home for a year. I dropped out of school. I worked a few jobs, and then I came back out here to finish. Like, I did all the paperwork and came out here. But it's definitely like an interesting vibe out here. Like, I'm an international relations major, and I don't think I would have gotten the same exposure at home as I would have here because there's just so many different groups of people here. Prague is a very diverse city. I mean, I don't even know how to describe it. You have people from all over the world. I mean, I think I've met people from most countries, if not every continent for sure. But I'm trying to think of like all the countries that I've met, but it's in the hundreds for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's also kind of what attracted me to Prague in particular is like in my boarding school, it wasn't a very traditional American high school experience. Like a lot of the students there were from all over the world as well because it attracts, the best talents in ballet, whatever. So we had some Americans, we had a lot of Asians, like Japanese and Korean students. So I got really into kind of like Asian culture and like anime and stuff. And I just loved being immersed in that like multicultural, diverse environment. And I was like, definitely in my high school or in my college experience, I want to continue that. So Prague would be obviously an awesome place to do that. And I've been really blessed to like meet so many different people and have continue friendships with like people from all around the world while I'm here.
So if we're talking about the school for a minute, was this in DC?
Yeah, this was in Washington, D.C., right in the capital.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I'm not that familiar with ballet in general. Like I don't know are they movements or like dances. Like I'm not educated enough.
Have you
to
seen the
even ask.
Nutcracker? Have you
It's
seen
probably
any
been a long
ballets?
time. I think maybe like a million years ago. Like I think my
Okay.
cousin did one
Okay.
time.
Definitely, for all of you guys watching out there, Swan Lake, Giselle, Nutcracker, Sleeping Beauty, top 4. If you see any of those, Romeo and Juliet is quite good as well, so highly recommend.
So like what are some of the skills? Like I know you have to be kind of light on your feet, right? Like I don't
It's definitely kind of a unique blend of skills that you have to be good at ballet. There's obviously like the whole artistry aspect, which is something that can't really be trained so much. It's just kind of in you or not, and it just comes out like during the music, during certain roles. Like some people more excel in the artistry aspect in like certain roles versus others. Like there's definitely sort of categories of dancers. Like somebody might be better in like a more dark, more sinister role, such as Caraboss in Sleeping Beauty, or they might be more of a light, sort of like innocent, sort of stylistic dancer. So that's kind of the artistic aspect, and then you have like the very technical aspect. You do have to be light on your feet. You have to do like turns and jumps and understand like a lot of different movement qualities. So there's like adagio, which for like musicians, you know, it's very slow and very graceful, and I was always, you know, better at adagio versus like allegro, petit allegro. That's like the jumping, quick, light on your feet stuff. So there's definitely a lot of different skills you have to have, and definitely each dancer has their own sort of skill set and what they excel at.
Is there like a, not a ranking, but like, is there a way to tell like who's a little better than somebody else, like in this way?
Oh yeah, absolutely. A lot of people are like, oh my God, was it like Dance Moms? And like, we did not have a pyramid or anything, but we definitely, there is a Dance Moms culture. There are Dance Moms. And at the ballet school that I went to, specifically the boarding school, there is definitely a ranking that's kind of evident when like the cast list comes out. So it's like a movie. If you see like, you know, they run up and they like check the list that's posted, like what role did you get, like who's the lead. It really is like that, like in Black Swan and stuff. And if you see like whoever got the lead role is like a big surprise, and everyone's gonna be like watching that girl, like why'd she get picked, does she have some like relationship with the teacher, the artistic director, like how does that happen? Or usually it's not a surprise. And I was never like the lead role per se at the boarding school, just because it was very competitive. I was usually, you know, in the corps de ballet in the back, like sitting there smiling, like whatever.
Why did you decide to attend like a ballet school as opposed to maybe a more run-of-the-mill like high school experience? Like at least for myself, I mean, I just went to a public high school in my city, so like my experience is totally different. Like I was student council president for a year, and then I worked a job. But yeah, like how is it how is it different, and like why, and what are some things you can say like?
Yeah, absolutely. So it definitely is different from like a traditional American high school experience. And I did do that for my first year of high school. Freshman year, I went to Olympia High School in Olympia, Washington. And that was a very big, like traditional public high school. I remember going to like the football games. I went to homecoming. Like I did do that for a year. I was like, whatever, I don't know how much I vibe with this like public high school situation. And I've been doing ballet like super seriously ever since I was probably like 12, 13, like 35, 40 hours a week. Like my heart was set on like doing it professionally, and you just have to be like training all the time, like and you basically have to go to one of these schools, either like a boarding school or like a pre-professional academy or something. So my sights were always kind of set from like 13, 14, 15, trying to get into like a ballet boarding school. And after my freshman year of high school, I moved and I lived alone, like in an apartment in Seattle. And I went to like a pre-professional program there for 1 year, which was kind of like my transition from public high school to like the full-on ballet boarding school. And it was just, you know, it's really a different world. Like I was never really thinking about college and SAT and like all that traditional stuff. So I guess that also kind of influenced my decision to come to Prague instead of like applying for Harvard.
Yeah. I actually was at Harvard this summer. Like not like to do courses or anything. I was just walking around with two of my friends from California and France because they were visiting, and that was kind of cool. They wanted to see Harvard. I'd never been there before.
Gotcha. I went to Oxford a couple of weeks ago, just as a tourist. I felt the same way. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was like I made it. You know, like I made it here. Yeah. So you did your freshman year in Washington State, and then the ballet school was also in Washington State, or that?
Washington D.C.
Oh, okay.
So it was like Washington to Washington. People were like, "Oh, that's so cool."
And that intermediary you spoke of, was that like was that part of school as well, or was it like?
So, fun fact, I fully like almost didn't really do school for like my sophomore year
Mm-hmm.
because it was like a brand new program. The school was like International Ballet Academy, and they had this fun school situation called the International Ballet Academic Co-op. So basically we would like just come in before ballet class like a couple hours early, and they would give us some like assignments to do. Look into that as much as you want, but it was not very rigorous. So
Okay.
yeah, the academic situation, I never really, like, I always tried my best and stuff, put effort into it because I knew it was important. I did take my SATs on my own, but it was definitely not my career focus at all, or like,
So it wasn't like a priority.
no. My priority was always like ballet and like auditions and that kind of thing, like through high school.
I know that for a year I went to a trade school
Mm-hmm.
in like my area, and the academics were good there, but there's just something about when you go to like just school in general, like it's like it's just that is the focus.
Yeah.
And at this trade school, it was like balancing with a trade. So I don't know. I noticed that. Like I don't think the academics were poor quality. In fact, they used iPads there. Like
Oh,
all the
wow.
students had iPads. We didn't have that at my old high school when I went back. But that's cool.
Yeah.
What would you say? Like, I know here in Europe they have like a tier system, and then they have to like not major in something, but they have to be knowledgeable about a subject. Was it like that, or was it more just kind of like you have these academics and then you do like the ballet practice like after?
Yeah, so I guess like the structure of like academics and ballet at Kirov was like, I remember my classes were a really unique mix academically. Like I had Russian classes every year, I had aesthetics, ballet history, we had like nutrition classes, anatomy for dancers. It was very like artistically focused academic curriculum. We didn't really do a lot of intense stuff in like chemistry or math or science. So my STEM education was not very substantial, but we would usually have like maybe from like 8 a.m. to noon or so, like 3 to 4 hours of classes with a break in between. Then we get like a lunch break, and then we were doing ballet classes from like 1 p.m. to like 6 or 7 p.m. And usually people would go to like the gym after, or we would do like stretching after, rehearsals or whatever. So yeah, it was usually divided that way. And there was never like the SAT or anything, so we weren't really like focusing on any specific academic targets. And it was also like a very international group. So I remember always thinking, I was, excelling in like the English classes because English was my native language, and it was never like super rigorous for me. So
Was it like a small school?
yeah, I think it was like a total of like 50 students.
Total.
Yeah.
And
there
all
was-
the grades? Like
Mhm.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was mostly high school students. There was a few middle school, and then it's ballet too. So there was only like in the whole school, like 6 guys.
I was gonna say was
Yeah.
it co-ed? Yeah.
It was technically co-ed, yes, but there was not that many guys.
That's interesting.
Mhm.
Like I wish I could have more questions. Like I'm trying to think. I'm just not as educated as I'd like to be in this subject. So
Yeah, it's definitely a very niche one. Like there's not a lot of people I talk to that really, it's like you tell people, oh, I was a dancer, and they either get it or they don't. Like it's a very specific kind of world to be involved in.
yeah, like ballet is it is an art form, like what you were saying earlier, for sure.
It's really different from a lot of other art forms, though, in that, like, in like painting or music, for example, like you've always got your tools and you can kind of change the medium that you work with and adapt your style, I feel like. But in ballet, like your tool or like your medium is your body. And there's only so much change you can have to that. So ballet is definitely one of the most like frustrating and like art forms. That's how I would sum it up.
If you could kind of like explain to somebody like the basics, or like the first like steps you'd need to take, figuratively and literally, what would they be?
Like if somebody wants to get involved with like taking ballet classes.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like Okay, so if you're gonna teach someone how to play the piano, you gotta show them where to put their fingers.
Oh,
So
okay,
it's
okay.
kind of like that's kind of like what I'm asking.
Okay, gotcha. So there's definitely like the five positions, that's like the foundation of ballet. And like honestly, biggest misconception about the five positions, they're like really not that important. Like nobody in a ballet class is gonna be like, you can't get into school unless you show me the five positions. Like the ones that you use most commonly are like, you usually start out exercises at the bar, so like you're basically holding onto a stick like on the wall, and you do like a lot of different things with your legs to like build up muscles and like articulate your like movements with your legs and stuff, and you usually do those from first position or fifth position. And then you go to the center and maybe you'll do like turns, so like you start in fourth position and then you do a turn and then you finish in fourth position. But frankly, third position and second position, like you're not going to use that much. Like, but yeah, I guess that's the core of a ballet class. Is you start, at the bar, holding onto the wall, doing like very boring exercises, which is why a lot of people quit when they're younger. And then you move to the center. You stand in the center and do like things with your arms. And then the best part of ballet class is going across the floor when you actually do movements like turns and jumps, like moving across the classroom, and that's like more advanced, but definitely the most rewarding part of class.
Okay. And you said like in these classes like it was a very multicultural school, but was the faculty also?
Oh man, I would say most of the faculty was Russian, because Russian ballet is definitely perceived as the most prestigious, most beautiful style. In my opinion, it definitely is. Like, there's kind of two camps in the ballet world that it's a little political, honestly. Like, we've got the American style, which is like New York City ballet, Balanchine, very sort of contemporary interpretation of ballet, and then Russian is like very traditional and very classical, and there's certain things they look for in terms of like the qualities in the dancers and the schooling and the performances, different standards that they have that kind of separate these two camps. Like, one of the funniest like little differentiating factors between Russian ballet and American ballet is just the way that they hold their hands. So this is something I can show, for example, real quick. I'm a little bit out of practice, but basically the Balanchine style is always made fun of because they say the hands look like claws, the way you're supposed to hold your hand. So like in the Balanchine style, it's more of like a position like this, like a circle with your hands. And then in the Russian style, you're supposed to have your thumb in the middle of your, like the second joint here of your middle finger. And it's like very much like more delicate, I guess. I don't know if you guys can see this on the camera.
No, I know what you mean.
The Balanchine is like claws, and then Russian is more like relaxed. So that's just kind of something that Russian dancers are always making fun of Balanchine dancers for.
So it's like, what was the American one, like this?
Yeah, it's more like that. Like, people are always like, it looks like you're eating a hamburger. Like, what are you doing with these fingers? Like, yeah, pretty good. And then Russian is supposed to be like more like delicate. It's almost like if you just like dropped your hand and then like made it into a shape. So just like.
So like this kind of.
Yeah, more.
But you're supposed to put your fingers up?
Yeah, so like these two are kind of like in line like this, like your second and your fourth finger. The pinky's a little bit raised, and then your thumb is in line with the second joint of your middle finger.
So to me, it sounds like it's a very intensive full body kind of thing, where even the smallest parts of your body you have to like tailor to the dance.
Oh yeah, it's very like detail oriented, like even down to the eyes. Like, I remember rehearsing for the Nutcracker, and my teacher was getting so mad at me because she's like, where are you looking? Like, what are you doing with your eyes? Because like even where your gaze is like super important to like creating this whole effect. And I was doing like the Arabian dance in the Nutcracker, and like you're supposed to move your eyes like in a certain way. So that's like you said, every detail, it's very, very detail oriented.
Is there anybody you met, maybe you went to school with this person as well, I don't know, but is there anybody you met that was like really like talented, like beyond kind of the norm, or like, okay, you practice for a whole decade and you're still at this point, but this person is just naturally gifted?
Yeah, I did encounter, throughout all my years of ballet, several different like child prodigies. There are definitely those kind of in the world, and it's always like, man, you know, you feel like you work so hard and you're just not going to be able to like get to the level of these people, because it's very much ballet, like I said before, like your tool is like your body. So some people are more just from birth more naturally set up for success because they have certain physical characteristics that are like more conducive to being successful in ballet. For example, like
if you're double jointed or something.
yeah,
like, I don't
double
know.
jointed, like hyperextended knees, archy feet, like a light jump, like natural turning abilities, just like a long neck, like long limbs, like all this stuff. Like, you know, obviously I have the long limbs, I'm super tall, but sometimes you see somebody that's like a little bit shorter and they still have the illusion of having long limbs, but it's easier for them to control. So it's like lots of different physical characteristics kind of play into like being successful.
Is there anyone you met like that maybe is like that is famous in this world, like that is like one of the shining stars or one of the most popular?
Yes, definitely. So one of the coolest experiences I had was when Kirov brought us to the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. to see the Mariinsky Ballet. Mariinsky Ballet is probably my favorite company. They're from St. Petersburg, Russia, and they were on tour doing Le Corsaire, which is like basically a ballet about pirates. It's pretty cool, in the Kennedy Center. And afterwards, we got to meet like all of the stars. So Maria Kareva, Maria Kachukova, like a lot of the like Mariinsky famous dancers. Maria Kareva was probably the coolest. She's on Instagram at Mara Chalk, and she's like a 21-year-old. She's about my age, I think, like prodigy from Vaganova Ballet Academy, who like very quickly rose up the ranks at the Mariinsky. I think she's like a first soloist now, and I remember just meeting her was so cool because she was like really close to our age and just super famous in Russia in the ballet world, and yet pretty humble as well. So like that was a very cool experience. I have a photo with her, like me and like all my ballet friends were like losing our minds.
No, that's cool, and especially if you go to a school like that and you're in the culture and you meet someone like that, like that can be like huge.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, it's like, to me, I mean, ballet always had this very like I guess what you were saying, like traditional and classic kind of vibe to it. Like, you know, you watch it and you have the classical music going and I always thought of the talent though. I mean, like being able to bounce off your feet like that and to be able to swing your legs and turn, like I feel like that's like a very like huge thing. Like definitely like to be able to do that, and also you're entertaining people. You know, it's a totally different like art form.
Yeah, it definitely is. And a lot of people too are like, why would I go to a ballet? They're not even saying anything. Like, I don't know what's going on. And it's like, that's one thing I guess that worries me is like, I'm not sure what the place for ballet is like kind of in this like modern world. Like it's definitely a very traditional and classical sort of art form that like a lot of old people like to watch, but people my age, you don't hear them saying, you know, oh, let's go see the ballet like very often. So
yeah. It's the same thing with like plays and like everything in this kind of category.
Opera.
Yeah, like orchestras, like this whole kind of area is, I think, being chipped away at because of I mean, I could just pull up a video on my laptop, but I will say it's not the same. You know, it's kind of like going to the movies. It's like a lot. You have a nice chair, the whole screen. It's like the atmosphere, the popcorn. I feel like you're paying for the atmosphere at the movies now, but with ballet and like, you know, orchestras and things like that, it can't necessarily be easily replaced because it's in person. You know, it's like I think people need to recognize that more. I'm a big like in person kind of like, you need to have these experiences in person because they help like make you who you are. Like I remember I saw the Star Wars orchestra when I was like 9 or 10 years old with my family, and that was awesome. You know, I listened to all the music they had in the movies, and that was totally different than just putting on headphones.
Absolutely.
You know, the lights
it's like
and
such a way to like connect when you're there, seeing it live, like the dancers physically moving on the stage and like hearing the music too. Like Czech National Ballet, they perform at like the Státní Opera and also Národní Divadlo. So definitely like check their schedule, see if they've got anything coming up. I've been to see them like many times, and it's a really cool immersive experience because they've got like the live music, the live dancers, and the theaters are beautiful as well. So
Is there any, now you have me thinking, right? Is there any location that is related to ballet that you either want to see or like have seen already?
oh yeah, I've definitely kind of every place that I've like traveled to in Europe, like a lot of these European capitals have like ballet companies associated with them. So like Milan, for example, there's the very famous La Scala Ballet, and I went to see their opera house when I was in Milan. And Dresden, they also have the Dresden Semper Opera Ballet. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's a very famous company, and I went to see their theater when I was in Dresden. Probably the biggest one that's a little bit unfortunate is the Mariinsky Ballet and the Bolshoi Ballet, both located in Russia. The Mariinsky is in St. Petersburg and the Bolshoi is in Moscow. And it has always been my dream to see one of those companies in St. Petersburg or in Moscow. So I'll have to wait on that dream a little bit, but
Unfortunately, yeah.
Until then, the most attainable one is maybe the Paris Opera in France. Definitely a beautiful, beautiful ballet company. They're just a little bit expensive, so I haven't seen that yet, but that's on the bucket list.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know they had these companies in every country.
Yeah.
Do some countries have like a lot more than others? Like I would imagine, Russia has those top two obviously, but I'm sure they have like a lot more just like around like the country.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So like Czech Republic, all I can think of is really the Czech National that's like worth knowing about. There's like the Czech National Ballet, that's pretty much it. Whereas in like France or Russia, for example, or Germany and Italy, they have a lot of smaller regional ones in addition to like the big name companies. So there's definitely more of like a ballet culture in some countries than in others. But I would say each country in Europe has at least one that's kind of like, there's like the Swedish National Ballet, the Finnish National Ballet, the Danish National Ballet. So.
Do they have like competitions like between countries and like between groups?
Yeah, I guess there kind of is kind of like an underlying competitive nature of like which companies are like better. I think everyone kind of accepts that the Russians are the best. And I don't really know why that's
some Cold War vibes there.
Yeah. And then in terms of actual competitions, like where you can win, there's like Youth America Grand Prix. There's different ballet companies or competitions in Europe. There's actually like, it's not so much of a sporting event as like the NFL or anything, but there's definitely competitions. I did a few of those when I was dancing, and the vibes are definitely dance moms vibes.
and I can see it being like, when you just said that thing about like American sports, I was thinking like it's probably not about scoring points, it's more about form. Is that?
Yeah, it's more about form, it's more about politics. Like I would say probably when I did YGP, like if you look at the score sheet, it's about like musicality is another big one. Like how well do your movements kind of line up with the music? It's about the choreography. If you're doing like a contemporary piece and you're working with a choreographer to do like, their kind of own choreography. It's also about your technique, like how clean are your movements? How polished is your technique? Like, are you doing all the hands correctly? Have everything in the right place? And then just like technically, how many turns can you do? How light are your jumps? Just like the general appearance, like even like you or like somebody that's never seen ballet or is familiar with the ballet world is able to tell the difference between like, oh, that looks good and that looks bad, but they're not sure why. Whereas like a dancer or somebody who's familiar with it can break it down for you and tell you, oh, it's because, her movements are out of sync with the music. She doesn't have a light jump. She doesn't have good technique. And there's like all these different elements that kind of play into like the final product.
Is there any performance that maybe you did or you did with a group or any story you have that like sticks out to you? I know we're kind of getting close to the time, but like it's okay. Like, do you have any like, what's a good story? Like something to.
Oh yeah, I got some good stories. So let's see. Probably, there's so many like behind the scenes stories too. Of people just like going on stage with like the wrong costume, or like people going on stage with like an ace bandage on that they're supposed to take off because like the teachers are really specific about that kind of stuff. But I would say probably something really cool that happened to me is the founder of Kirov, his name is Oleg Vinogradov. He also worked like with the Mariinsky Ballet in Russia, big like Russian dude. He came to observe our exam classes. And basically every year you have exams, and it's a really big deal in your last year at ballet school because it's like your graduation exam, and they evaluate you like basically based on your ballet technique if you graduate or not. So it's like very different from traditional schools. But he was coming to observe our like practice for the graduation exam. And I remember my teacher had me like basically in the corner. She didn't like me very much. So I was just like there on the side of the bar like doing my exercises. And he's like watching the class, right? Very intimidating old guy. And he just like stops the music, he stops the class, and he like points at me. He's like speaking in Russian with my teacher, like asking her questions about me. And then she's like being very negative because she's like, she doesn't like me. And then like after the exercise, he came to me and he's like, what's your name? You know, how old are you? How long have you been at Kirov? Like asking me all these questions. And after the class, he like pulled me aside and my teacher, and he basically invited me to like go perform in Russia and learn like the White Swan pas de deux. And pas de deux is basically like dance of two. It's like a French word, and it's basically like a man and a woman dance together. White Swan is from Swan Lake. It's like a very big deal. And I was like, oh my gosh,
that's amazing though. Like
yeah.
Offer of a lifetime, right?
No, it was crazy. And I know this guy like specifically has a penchant for like very tall dancers, so that probably helped me out a bit. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go to Russia for obvious reasons. My parents were like, what? And my teacher was also like not very supportive of that because, as I said, she had other favorites in the class and that was not me. But that was just like a really, really cool experience that I'll probably always remember just because he's such a legend in the world of ballet, and to hear like such a positive impression that I made on him.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, like that must have been the offer of a lifetime, and like it makes sense that you couldn't go just because of the circumstances. Like, yeah. I mean, you were probably a little younger too. I mean, you're in high school, and it's kind of like, oh my God, like I would have to leave the country and move there, and it's like totally something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I was like 17, and I never left America at that point. Not world traveler yet.
That's crazy. That's crazy. What a story, you know, like I don't think I've ever met anybody who went to like a ballet school or just a school that is focused on like a specific kind of thing like that. So that's like a very cool story.
Yeah, definitely. It's always a great conversation starter, and I definitely think while I don't really do ballet as much anymore, it definitely has kind of informed the person I've become and given me a lot of great transferable skills and an appreciation for the arts that will last my life. So. All
right. Well, I think that's towards the end, but thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Guys, I should have some more episodes coming soon, and peace out. Cheers.